Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to our Srimad Bhagavatam review class. We'll begin with our prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजना सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगणा ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to our Srimad Bhagavatam overview class. We are discussing from the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we are discussing the Moon dynasty, and we saw that in the Moon dynasty there was a king Yayati Maharaj, and he had 5 sons. And yesterday we discussed the dynasty of Puru, one of the sons of Yayati, and how in the dynasty of Puru the famous king Dushyant appeared, and we heard the story of the son of Dushyant and Shakuntala, and how he was a very very powerful king. The son was called Bharata, and he had no sons because his queens, they killed their sons because of the fear that because the sons of these queens were not resembling the father. So ultimately Maruts, they gave the son called Bhardwaj to Bharat Maharaj. So that's what we discussed. So now we'll continue from the 21st chapter. So 21st chapter is entitled as the dynasty of Bharata. So Shukdev Goswami describes that Bharadwaj, he had a son called Manu, and this Manu had 5 sons: Brihatshatra, Jaya, Mahavirya, Nara, and Garga. In the dynasty of Nara, there was a great famous king called Rantidev. And we have heard the story of Rantidev many times, how he was such a great charitable king. So Shukdev Goswami describes the story of Rantidev. So he says that Rantidev is famous both in this world and in the next, because and he is glorified not only by the humans, he is glorified in the assembly of the Devatas also. Rantidev was such a great devotee of the Lord that he was satisfied with whatever he got by the arrangements of providence. And because of this, he was actually penniless. He became penniless. He was Nishkinchanasya. And his only shelter was Supreme Personality. He was very, very sober personality. He was a Dhira. Whenever a guest would come to ask for something, this Rantidev was such a great charitable king, he would give everything. And therefore, because of this charitable disposition, he and his family suffered a lot. He and his family members, actually, they were shivering for want of food and water. Because whatever he had given in charity. In spite of all these situations, Rantidev, he was always very, very sober. Once it so happened that he fasted for 48 days. And after that, when Rantidev and his family, they sat to break the fast, a Brahmana came. This Rantidev, he was a self-realized soul. He was as Bhagavad Gita says, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Shuni Chaiva Shvapake Cha Pandita Samadarshinaha. So this Rantidev, he would see Supreme Lord in everyone's heart. He was seeing everybody with equal vision. So he perceived the presence of soul and super soul in every body. So therefore, when a Brahmana came, he received the Brahmana very nicely. He paid the respects and gave him a nice place to sit. And this Brahmana, he asked, I am hungry. Please give me some food. So Rantidev and his family, whatever food they had, Rantidev gave some part of it to this Brahmana. He ate it and went away. Whatever food was remaining, he divided the remaining food amongst the family members, relatives, and whatever he had, he was just about to eat it. At that time, a Shudra arrived. Shudra said, I am hungry. Please give me something to eat. Rantidev, whatever little food he had, he gave him also. He gave that food to this Shudra. In some time, another guest arrived, surrounded by dogs. He was a dog keeper. He was a, Shudra, dog keeper. He came and he said, O king, I and my dogs are very, very hungry. Please give us something to eat. Rantidev, whatever little food was still remaining, he offered that to this dog keeper. He also ate and went away. He only had some water remaining. A Chandala arrived. Chandala said, O king, I am so very thirsty. Please give me some water. When this Chandala made this appeal, hearing the very, very, uh, uh, kind, very, very, this words of this Chandala, who was really suffering because of thirst. This Rantidev, he became so very aggrieved because he was not seeing, oh, he is a Chandala. He was seeing that a Jiva, a living entity, is suffering. So when he heard these words of this Chandala, Rantidev, he spoke. He spoke to the Supreme Lord. He offered his prayers. He offered his aspirations. Na kamayeham gatimishwarat param ashtardhiyuktam apunar bhavam va artim prapadye akhila deha bhajam antastito yena bhavantya dukkha. Na kamayeham, I do not pray to the Supreme Lord, Ishvara, Param Ishvara. I am not praying to the Supreme Lord for mystic siddhis, Ashtardhi. I am not interested in any of the mystic perfections. Apunar Bhavamba, I am not interested in liberation also. I only want to stay among all the men, all the living entities of this world who are suffering and serve them. And I am ready to suffer on their behalf. Let them be liberated. I will be suffering on their behalf in this material world. They should be liberated. This is a Vaishnava. Prabhupada writes, Vaishnava is para dukkha dukhi. He cannot see the trouble and the suffering condition of the living entities. And therefore, Rantidev is saying, I alone should experience the suffering of all the jivas alone. He says, I can tolerate my suffering, but I cannot tolerate the suffering of other living entities. Just like Vasudeva leper. Vasudeva Datta, he told Lord Chaitanya, oh Lord Chaitanya, let me suffer all the suffering of the living entities, of all the living entities of this universe. You deliver all of them. I am ready to suffer for millions of births. The same prayer is spoken by Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj also says, Naivo dvije paraduratyaya vaitaranya twadvirya gayana mahamrita magna chittaha shoche tato vimukha chetasa indriyarthe maya sukhaya bharamudvahato vimudhan. He says, Naivo Dvije, oh my Lord, I am not interested in going uh, to the Vaikuntha. I am not interested in getting liberated. I am suffering, I am lamenting for the fallen condition of the living entities. Shoche tato, because they are vimukha indriya, vimukha chetasa. They are they have turned their face away from Krishna. Vimukha chetasa, indriyarthe, for sense gratification. Maya sukhaya bharamudvahato vimudhan. They are interested in their own sense gratification. So I am lamenting for the fallen condition of the living entities in this world. After offering this prayer, you know, so someone may say that, but you should drink little water because you are dying out of water. You are suffering of thirst. You should keep this water. Don't give this water to Chandal. Rantidev said, by offering the water which was about to save, which can save the life of this Chandal, I will be free from hunger, thirst, fatigue, moroseness, trembling, and all the problems, all the lamentation. If I give water to this Chandala, I will be freed from all these sufferings. So therefore, Rantidev, being a compassionate Vaishnava, although on the verge of death, he gave that water to Chandal without any hesitation. And then Shukdev Goswami reveals the personalities who had appeared in the form of Brahmana, Shudra, Chandala, doorkeeper. He says that to test Rantidev, the controllers of the three worlds, Brahma, Shiva, and the Devatas, they had appeared in the form of Brahmana, Chandala, and Shudra. And therefore, when they saw such great devotional and charitable disposition of Rantidev, they manifested their real forms. They gave all the blessings to Rantidev. Rantidev offered obeisances to all of them. And he was not interested in anything material. He did not ask any benedictions from these personalities because his mind was focused on Lord Vasudev. What was the mood of Rantidev? Ishvaralambanam chittam kurvato ananyaradhasah maya gunamayi rajan swapnavat pratyaliyata. He says, completely taking shelter of the Supreme Lord. Ishvara alambanam. If the mind is taking shelter of the Supreme Lord without any deviation, then what is the result? One does not come under the control of the three modes. For him, the three modes of nature, they vanish just like a dream disappears on its own. That's why when we take shelter of the Supreme Lord, when we take shelter of the devotees of the Lord, then mam chaya avya vicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One can very easily overcome the influence of the three modes of material nature. Jnanavalambaka kechit kechit karmavalambaka vayam tu haridasanam padatranavalambaka. Some people take shelter of the Jnana. Jnanavalambaka kechit. Kechit karmavalambaka. Some people take shelter of karma. But we are taking shelter of the padatrana avalambaka. We are taking shelter of the footwear of the devotees of the Lord. That is the aspiration of a devotee, to become humble servant of the servant. Dasa, 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 anudas. And then Shukdev Goswami describes that because Rantidev was such a great devoted personality, all the associates of Rantidev, those who followed him, they also were favored by his mercy. They also became liberated. They also became the associates of Lord. So therefore, Chakravarti Thakur writes that by association of Rantidev, even his ministers, even his uh, officers, friends, relatives, whoever were there, all became pure devotees. That is the power of association of a pure devotee. Mahat sevam dvaramahur vimukte stamodvaram yoshitam sangi sangam. By associating with a devotee of the Lord, the doors of liberation get opened. But if one associates with the sense gratifiers, the gate to hell is wide open. So therefore, Prabhupada writes that Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that a Vaishnava is meritorious in proportion to the number of devotees he has created. So we can understand who is a great Vaishnava by the amount of preaching he has done, by the amount of people he is influencing, by the number of people who are becoming Krishna conscious by his presence. And we can see in the life of Prabhupada, by his presence he made thousands and thousands of devotees. So that is the symptom of a great devotee of the Lord. Rantideva anuvarnitaha. Rantideva anuvarnita means all those who were followers of Rantidev, they became first class devotees. So after describing about Rantidev, Shukdev Goswami describes about other descendants of Bharadwaj. He says from Garga came Shini. Shini's son was Gargya, and from Gargya, although he was a Kshatriya, there came a generation of Brahmanas. And from another son of Manyu, Mahavirya, his son was Duritaksha, and he begot sons called Taryaruni, Kavi, and Pushkaruni. These are also Brahmanas. And then after that he describes about Brihatshatra. Brihatshatra's son was Hasti. So Hasti was a very, very famous personality on whose name the city of Hastinapur was named, which is now New Delhi. So this Hasti is a very great personality, and Shukdev Goswami describes now the dynasty of Hasti. So he says King Hasti, he had three sons, Ajamedha, Dvimedha, and Purumedha. So Ajamedha descendants were Nila, Priyamedha, and Brihadishu. And Priyamedha and others were also there. They became Brahmanas. There was one other personality, Riksha. He will be described in the next chapter. So he says, Shukdev Goswami says that from Ajamedha there came a son Brihadishu, and he describes the dynasty of Brihadishu. How in his dynasty so many great personalities they appeared, and one of them was Para. This Para had two sons, Nipa and Prithusena. This Nipa, he had 100 sons, and he begot a son called Brahma Datta from his wife Kritvi, and this son was called as Vishwaksena. Vishwaksena's son was Udakshena, and Udakshena's son was Bhallat. So interesting discussion about the wife of Nipa is described by Shukdev Goswami. He says Shukdev Goswami's Nipa's wife was Kritvi, who was daughter of Shukdeva. So Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Prabhupada, he describes in detail about who is this Shuka. Because we know Shukdev Goswami was a celibate. Immediately when he came out of the womb, he walked off. So Chakravarti Thakur describes that this Shuka which is mentioned is different from the Shukdev Goswami who spoke Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. So it is described in Brahma Vaivarta Purana that Vyasadeva, he was having the guilty of not begetting child because the child can deliver the ancestors. So he married the daughter of Jabali called Arani, and he performed lots of sacrifices to get a child, and then he placed his seed in the womb of Arani. 12 years passed. The child was not coming out of the womb of Arani. Vyasadeva, he became very anxious. He said to the child, "Oh child, why are you not coming out? Why are you giving pain to my wife?" The child said, "If I come out of the womb, I'll be affected by the Maya. Maya will attack me, so therefore I will remain here my whole life meditating on the Lord." Vyasadeva said, I am telling you, you will not be overcome by Maya. I will guarantee that. Please come out. Come out of the womb and show your face to me. You will not be affected by Maya. The child in the womb says, I don't believe your words because you yourself are affected by Maya. You are so much caught up by the affection because of your wife and son, and how can you give the guarantee? I don't believe your words. Vyasdev says, then whose words will you believe? Child says, I will trust the person who controls Maya. So Vyasdev, he went to Dwarka. That time Krishna was there. And he told the whole story. Lord Krishna came along with Vyasdev to his ashram. And Lord spoke to the child within the womb of Arani. So when Lord appeared, the child said, O Madhava, O Lord, please speak that I will not be affected by Maya. Only then I will leave the womb and come out. If you guarantee, then I will leave the womb. Lord said, you will not be affected by Maya. I am giving you my guarantee. Please come out. So when Shukdev Goswami was, uh, you know, given this promise by Lord, then he came out. And as soon as he came out, he walked off. He did not even wait for the samskar. And Vyasdev, he is running behind Shukdev Goswami, calling his son to come back. Shukdev Goswami, when he saw the condition of his father, he was such a mystic yogi, powerful mystic yogi. He created another duplicate Shukdev. That Shukdev remained with his father and he got married, and his daughter was Kritvi, who got married to Nipa. So that is a story about the wife of Nipa. And then he says, about Prithu, there were, then he describes about the dynasty of Nila, another son of Ajamedha. So in dynasty of Nila, there was a personality called Mudgal and 4 other sons. So the 4 other sons of Mudgal, they are described, and it is said that they ruled a city which are called Panchal Desh. So from this Mudgal, there was a dynasty of Brahmanas who took birth. There was one son of Mudgal called Divodas, who will be described in the next chapter. And this Mudgal had one daughter called Ahilya. The famous Ahilya who got married to Gautam Rishi, and she was cursed to become the stone. The same Ahilya. So Ahilya from Gautam Rishi begot a son Shatananda. Shatananda's son was Satyadhriti. Satyadhriti's son was Sharadwan. And Sharadwan, his son was, he got 2 children. Once he was roaming in the forest. So he saw a male and female child. So what had happened? That this Sharadwan, when he met Urvashi, he discharged semen, and this semen got transformed. It fell on the grass and got transformed into twins. These twins were Kripa and Kripi. So when these twins, they took birth, Sharadwan, he left those twins and he came back. So once Shantanu, he was hunting in the forest, and he saw the male and female children crying in the forest. Out of compassion, he brought them to the palace and gave the name Kripa and Kripi. This Kripi later married to Dronacharya. So that is the description of the dynasty of Bhardwaj and Hasti. And then in the 22nd chapter, Shukdev Goswami describes the dynasty of Divodas, one of the descendants of Nila. So Divodas, his son was Mitrayu. He had 4 sons, Chavana, Sudasa, Sahadev, and Somaka. In the dynasty of Somaka, he had 100 sons. Somaka had 100 sons. Jantu, Prishat, and 98 other. Prishata's son was very, very important personality called Drupada. And Drupada's son was Drishtadyumna, and also he got a daughter, Draupadi. And Drishtadyumna's son was Drishtaketu. So then after describing this, he describes the dynasty of another son of Ajamedha, Riksha. So Riksha, his son was Samvarna and his son was Kuru. Kuru's son was Sudhanu, Parikshi, Jhanu, and Nishadha. And then he describes the dynasty of Sudhanu. In his dynasty, there was a great king called Brihadratha. Brihadratha, he begot Kushagra. Kushagra's son was Rishabha. And ultimately, in his dynasty, there was a king called Jahu. From Brihadratha, with his another wife, he begot a son called Jarasandha. And Shukdev Goswami describes that, this Jarasandha, when he took birth in 2 halves, because Brihadratha, he did a sacrifice and he got a fruit to be from the Yajna Purusha. And the personality told that you give this to your wife. So this Brihadratha, when he gave this fruit to his wife, she cut it in 2 halves and ate it. As a result, the child which was born was in 2 halves. So thinking that, this is a very, very, unfortunate condition, so he threw that child in the forest, the 2 halves. There was the demoness called Jara. As a play, this Jara, she joined the 2 halves and told, come to life, come to life. And the 2 pieces joined. And that personality was Jarasandha, because he was joined by demoness Jara. That's why he was called as Jarasandha. Jarasandha's son was Sahadeva, his son was Somapi, and his son was Shrutashrava. After Jarasandha was killed by Bhima, Lord Krishna established Sahadeva as the king of Magadha. And then Shukdev Goswami describes the dynasty of Jahanu, other son of Kuru. So in the dynasty of Jahanu, there was a famous king called Pratipa. Pratipa, he had 3 sons, Devapi, Shantanu, and Bahalika. So it so happened that Devapi, although he was the eldest, he left the kingdom of his father and went to the forest. Because of that, Shantanu became the king. This Shantanu, he was Mahabhish in his previous birth. Shantanu, he was called by the name because he had the mystic power that by his touch, even an old person would become young and very, very suitable for sense gratification. That's why he was very, very popular. Everybody was happy with this Shantanu. Once it so happened that there was no rainfall in the kingdom for 12 years. All the Brahmanas, they came and told Shantanu that because you have illegally acquired and inherited the kingdom of your elder brother, the kingdom is belonging to your elder brother, but you are ruling this kingdom, you are faulty for enjoying the kingdom of your brother. Return the kingdom. That's why we are not getting rains. Shantanu, he went to the forest and requested Devapi to please take the kingdom. But there is a history regarding Devapi. There was one minister of Shantanu. His name was Ashwavira. With the help of some Brahmanas, this Ashwavira, he induced Devapi to transgress the injunctions of the scriptures. And that's why he became unfit for the post of the ruler. So Brahmanas, they deviated Devapi from the scriptural injunctions. And therefore, when the Shantanu, he went to Devapi and asked that you please come and rule. He did not agree, and on the contrary, he blasphemed Vedic scriptures. As a result, he became more fallen. So under all these circumstances, Shantanu again became the king, and he was ruling so very nicely that Indra, he became happy and showered all the rains. Then Shukdev Goswami says that a very interesting point, piece of information. He says Devapi later he took to the path of mystic yoga and he became so very powerful. He is staying in a village called Kalapa Gram, and to this day he is living. And then Shukdev Goswami says, at the end of this Kali Yuga, when the next Kali Yuga begins, he will again start the Moon dynasty. And then Shukdev Goswami describes that Bahalika, his son was Somadatta, and Somadatta had three sons, Bhuri, Bhurishrava, and Gala. These are all famous personalities. We have heard many times Bhurishrava, and so many personalities will come in these chapters now. Then after this, Shukdev Goswami describes the dynasty of Shantanu. Shantanu Maharaj, he married Ganga, and from Ganga he begot Bhishma, the great devotee, self-realized soul, very, very exalted devotee, the foremost of the warriors. And this Bhishma, he was so very powerful that he even defeated and satisfied Parshuram. From Shantanu, he married one more girl called Satyavati. So before that, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes that Bhishma, once he abducted three daughters of Kashiraj, Ambika, Ambalika, and Amba. And these daughters, they were forcibly kidnapped, abducted by Bhishma, because he wanted Vichitravirya to marry all these daughters. When Amba, she realized that, I am not getting married to Bhishma, because she started liking Bhishma for his valor. But Bhishma, he had taken a vow of celibacy. So therefore, he rejected the appeal of Amba. Amba then approached Parshuram. Parshuram, he was the spiritual master of Bhishma. Parshuram told Bhishma that you marry Amba. But Bhishma, because he had taken a vow of celibacy, Bhishma refused. Parshuram, because of this refuse, because he refused, Bhishma refused Parshuram, he fought with Parshuram. He fought with Bhishma. But Bhishma, he was so very powerful that Bhishma, he defeated Parshuram. And because of that, Parshuram became so very happy and gave blessings to Bhishma. Shantanu, he married Satyavati. And Satyavati, she had two sons, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. So this Vichitravirya, he married Ambika and Ambalika. But because this Vichitravirya, he was so very attached to the wives, he had a heart attack and he died out of tuberculosis without any sons. Chitrangada, he was killed by a Gandharva. So therefore, he also had no sons. Who was this Satyavati? Shukdev Goswami describes that Satyavati, he was a daughter of a king called Uparichar Vasu. This Uparichar Vasu, he begot Satyavati from the womb of a fisher woman. And this fisher woman later raised her. That's why this Satyavati was a fisher woman. And then describes, Shukdev Goswami says that this Parashar Muni, he begot Vyasadev from Satyavati. That Vyasadev is the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And from Vyasadev, Shukdev Goswami says, I was born. Vyasadev, he rejected his other disciples headed by Paila. And he taught Srimad Bhagavatam to me, Shukdev Goswami is saying, because I had no material desires. And then Vyasadeva, because now there was no son in the dynasty. Chitrangada was killed by Gandharva, Vichitravirya died, Bhishma had taken a vow of celibacy, so there were no sons. Satyavati requested Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva was the brother of Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. So in Satyavati, she requested that you beget children from Ambika and Ambalika. That was allowed in the previous times. Devarena sutotpattim. If the person cannot beget child from his wife, the brother of the person can do the needful. But the scriptures say that this is not recommended in Kali Yuga. It is said that Ashwamedham Gavalambam Sannyasam Palapaitrikam Devarena Sutotpattim Kalau Pancha Vivarjayet. There are 5 things which are prohibited in Kali Yuga: horse sacrifice, cow sacrifice, Mayavad sannyas, offering flesh to the ancestors, and begetting child from the wife of the brother. All these are prohibited in Kali Yuga. And then Shukdev Goswami says that from Vyasadeva, from Ambika begot Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra had 100 sons headed by Duryodhana and one daughter called Dushala. From Ambalika he begot Pandu, and third time when Satyavati requested, so the Amba and Ambalika, they sent one of the maid servants of Vichitravirya, and from her Vyasadeva begot Vidura. So after describing this, Shukdev Goswami describes the dynasty of Pandavas, dynasty of Pandu Maharaj. So Pandu had 2 wives, Kunti and Madari, because Pandu was cursed by a sage. That's why he had to refrain from sex life. So therefore, Kunti, because she had the benediction, she begot children from the Devatas. From Dharmaraj, she begot Yudhishthir Maharaj, whose son was Devaka. From Vayu, she begot Bhima, and Bhima had 2 sons, Ghatotkach and Sarvagata. From Indra, Kunti begot Arjuna. Arjuna had Abhimanyu. Arjuna had many wives. So from Subhadra, he had a son called Abhimanyu. From Ulupi, she was the daughter of Nagas. He had a son called Iravan. And from the princess of the Manipura province, Arjuna begot a son called Babruvahan. Because the king of Manipur, he had a condition. I'll give you my daughter on one condition, that you will give me the son. So Babruvahan remained as the king of Manipur. So then Shukdev Goswami says that Abhimanyu, he married Uttara, the daughter of Viradaraj, and begot Parikshit. This Parikshit, when we have heard in great detail that how he was about to be killed by the Brahmastra, which was thrown by Ashwatthama, and Krishna personally entered the womb of Uttara and saved Parikshit. So this Abhimanyu, Shukdev Goswami says, he was a great warrior who begot Parikshit Maharaj. And then he says, who begot you, he says, you were born of Abhimanyu. So he says he's telling to Parikshit. And then he says that, oh Parikshit, you have 4 sons, Janmejaya, Shrutasena, Bhimasena and Ugrasena. All of them are very, very powerful. Out of those, Janmejaya is the eldest. And then he describes what will happen in the future. Because of your death by the Takshaka, by the biting of Takshaka, your son Janmejaya, he'll become very angry and he'll perform a Sarpa Yaga with the intention to kill all the snakes. This Janmejaya, he'll be a very, very powerful king. He'll conquer the whole world and he'll perform Ashwamedh sacrifices with Tura as his priest. And therefore, he'll be called as Turagamedhasa. From Janmejaya, his son was Shatanika. The Shatanika, he will learn the Vedas from Yajnavalkya, he'll learn military art from Kripacharya, and he'll learn transcendental knowledge from Shaunaka. And then Shukdev Goswami describes the descendants of Shatanika. After describing the descendants of Shatanika, he describes some more descendants of Jarasandha, the future of the Magadha dynasty, future kings of the Magadha dynasty. And then at the end of this chapter, Shukdev Goswami says that all these personalities will rule the Magadha dynasty of Brihadartha for 1000 years. After describing this, now 23rd chapter is entitled The Dynasties of the Sons of Yayati. So now Shukdev Goswami describes the dynasty of the fourth son of Yayati called Anu. So now so far he has described the dynasty of Puru, the fifth son. Now he describes the dynasty of remaining four sons. And he describes that in Anu, he had son called Sabhanar. Sabhanar's son again was named as Sabhanar. His name was Kalanar. His son was Kalanar. Kalanar's son was Srinjaya. And in his dynasty, ultimately, there were two personalities, Ushinara and Titikshu. Ushinara had a famous son called Shibi, the great person who was the charitable king. You have heard about Shibi Maharaj. And this Shibi, his son is also described, and then Shukdev Goswami describes about the descendants of Titikshu also. And then he describes about the descendants of one of the person who is coming in the dynasty of Titikshu. His name is Rompad. Rompad, he had no children. And we have heard the story of Rompad Maharaj. It comes in Ramayana. Rompad, he married a daughter of Dashrath Maharaj called Shanta. So this Rompad, when he married Shanta, Shanta ultimately married Rishyashringa. Who was Rishyashringa? Rishyashringa, he was a very powerful personality. From childhood, he was very much protected. He had never seen a woman in his life. Because his father, he was very much protective. So once it so happened that it was a famine in the dynasty of Rompad, in the kingdom of Rompad. So the priests, they told that if you bring Rishyashringa here, then there will be rains. So it is a long story how Rompad, he sends few prostitutes and they entice Rishyashringa. And ultimately Rishyashringa enters the kingdom and it starts raining. This Rishyashringa, he helped this Dashrath Maharaj to perform a sacrifice, and by the sacrifice of Rishyashringa, Rompad Maharaj also got a son called Chaturanga. And then Shukdev Goswami describes the descendants of Rompad, and ultimately in the dynasty of Rompad, there was a personality called Adhiratha. Who was this Adhiratha? Very famous personality. Once this Adhiratha, he was bathing in the water, in the Ganga. He found a baby in the basket. He was crying. He rescued that baby and brought him to his home and nourished him. That boy was Karna. And this Karna, he had a son called Vrishasena. Then after this, he describes the dynasty of Druhuyu and Turvasu. So after describing the dynasty of Druhuyu and Turvasu, Shukdev Goswami describes the dynasty of the eldest son of Yadu, eldest son of Yayati, who is Yadu. He says, the dynasty of Yadu Maharaj is very, very glorious. Varnayami mahapunyam sarva papa haram nrinam yador vamsham nirashrutva sarva papai pramuchyate. So the dynasty of Yadu Maharaj is so very powerful. Varnayami mahapunyam. It is supremely pious. Sarva papa haram. Anybody who hears about the dynasty of Yadu Maharaj, just the description purifies one of all the sinful reactions, because yatra avatirno bhagavan. In the dynasty of Yadu Maharaj, the supreme personality of Godhead himself appeared as a human. Narakritihi. Paramatma, although he is Supreme Lord, he appeared as a human. So Prabhupada gives an elaborate purport about uh, although Supreme Lord appears as a human, he is not a human, he is a supreme transcendental personality. And those people who are fool, they cannot understand. Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanumashritam. People who do not have sufficient knowledge, they think that Supreme Lord, when he appears, he gets covered by Maya and he takes a human form. So therefore, Chakravarti Thakur also writes, Narakriti means his swarup is that of a human, but he is not a human person. He is not a human. The human form is just secondary. Just like Narad Muni is telling to Yudhishthir Maharaj, Yuyam niloke batbhuri bhaga lokam punana munayo bhiyanti yesham grihana vasatiti sakshat gudham param brahma manushya lingam. He's saying, Oh Yudhishthir Maharaj, you are supremely fortunate. Of all the people of the world, you are the most fortunate. Because the great personality, the Supreme Lord, who is Manushya Lingam, who has appeared in the human form, is residing in your house. He is a Supreme Lord. So therefore, now Shukdev Goswami describes the dynasty of Yadu Maharaj. He says, Yadu Maharaj, he had 4 sons, Sahasrajit, Kroshta, Nala and Ripu. So he describes the dynasty of Sahasrajit. He says Sahasrajit had a son called Shatajit. Shatajit had 3 sons, Mahahaya, Renuhaya and Hayahaya. In the dynasty of Hayahaya, there was a personality called Krita Virya. So Krita Virya, he had a famous, very, very powerful son called Kartivirya Arjuna. And we have heard about Kartivirya Arjuna in the pastime of Jamadagni and Parshuram. That is the same Kartivirya who appeared in the dynasty of Yadu. And then describes the further descendants of Kartivirya. He had 3 sons. Shukdev Goswami says that when Kartivirya Arjuna, he was killed, his sons, he attacked Parshuram, and Parshuram, he destroyed all the sons, only 5 sons were remaining. And then he describes further in the dynasty of Kartivirya, there was one called, one of the sons was called as Jayadhwaja. In his dynasty, the famous personality Madhu appeared, and Madhu's son was Vrishni. So the dynasties of Yadava, Madhava and Vrishni had their origin in the names Yadu, Madhu and Vrishni. So after describing all these, he says that in the dynasty of Kroshta, the other son of Yadu, there was a personality called Chitraratha. Chitraratha, his son was the famous Shashabindu. Shashabindu was a greatly fortunate and greatly powerful mystic yogi. And he was the possessor of the 14 jewels. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, what are the 14 jewels? He had a very great chariot, elephant, horse, wife, arrows. He had a wonderful reservoir of wealth. He was wearing a wonderful garland and so on. This Shashabindu, he had 10,000 wives. And interestingly, he begot 1 lakh sons from each of the wives. So therefore, how many sons he had? He had 1 billion sons, Shashabindu. One of the sons of Shashabindu was Prithushrava. Prithushrava's son was Dharma. Dharma's son was Ushana. And this Ushana, he performed 100 horse sacrifices. And then in the dynasty of Ushana, there was a person called Jyamagha. Jyamagha's son was Vidarbha. Vidarbha's dynasty will be described later by Shukdev Goswami. And then he describes a little bit about Jyamagha also. So this Jyamagha, he had no sons. His wife was, her name was Shaibya. But because he was so very afraid of Shaibya, he did not marry. Once, Jamagha, he conquered a kingdom, and he brought one of the prostitutes from the royal enemy, whom he defeated. When this lady was there sitting with Jamagha, the wife of Jamagha, Shaibya, she saw. She became very angry. And she said, "My husband, you are a cheater. Who is this girl sitting with you on your chariot?" Jamaga, out of fear, he said, "She'll be your daughter-in-law." Because he was so very afraid of Shaibya. Shaibya, when she heard these joking words from her husband, she smiled and she replied that, "But I am a sterile and I do not have a co-wife. How will, you know, she become my daughter-in-law?" Jamagha, he said, "Don't worry. I shall see that you indeed get a son." So this Jamagha, in the past, he had helped the Devatas and he had worshipped the Devatas. Devatas, out of their compassion, they gave a son to Jamagha, and that son was Vidarbha. So this Vidarbha, when he grew up, he married the girl whom this Jamagha had brought. So then the last chapter of the ninth canto, entitled Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this Rompad Maharaj, you know, so now Shukdev Goswami describes the uh, descendants of Rompad Maharaj, and he says that Vidarbha, he had three sons, Kusha, Krata, and Rompad. So this Rompad, in his dynasty, there was a king called Chedi, and Chedi's son was Chaidya and others. Who was this Chaidya? The famous personality. Damoghosh. Who was Damoghosh? The father of Shishupal. In the dynasty of Krata, there was a famous king called Satvata, and Satvata, he had 7 sons: Bhajaman, Bhaji, Divya, Vrishni, Devavriddha, Andhaka, and Mahabhoja. So from Bhajaman, by one wife, this Bhajaman had 3 sons: Nimalochi, Kinkana, and Drishti. And then describes the sons of Devavriddha also, and he describes the sons of Mahabhoja. After this, Shukdev Goswami describes the dynasty of Vrishni. The famous Vrishni dynasty also comes from this personality. Vrishni, he had 2 sons, Sumitra and Yudhajit, and he describes the whole dynasty of Yudhajit. In the family of Yudhajit, he had 2 sons, Shini and Anamitra. Anamitra, he had 3 sons, Nigha, Shini, and again a son called Vrishni. Vrishni had 2 sons, Shwafalka and Chitraratha. Shwafalka, he had the famous son Akrura. Akrura was the son of Shwafalka. And then Chitraratha, he had a son called Viduratha. So Viduratha's son will be described in some time. And then he describes the dynasty of another personality, Andhaka. So Andhaka, in his dynasty, there was a king called Ahuka. Ahuka had 2 sons, very famous personalities, Devaka and Ugrasena. Ugrasen had 9 sons and 5 daughters. And Ugrasen's son, very famous personality, Kamsa. One of the 9 sons was Kamsa. And of these 5 daughters, Kamsa, Kamsavati, Kanka, Surabhu, and Rashtrapalika, they were married to the daughters of Vasudev. And Devaka, he had 4 sons and 7 daughters. They all were married to Vasudev. And then after this, Shukdev Goswami describes the dynasty of Chitraratha. Chitraratha, his son was Viduratha, and ultimately in his dynasty, there was a personality called Ridika. Ridika had three sons, Devamidha, Shatadhanu, and Kritavarma. Devamidha, he had son called Shura, who married Marisha, and from her, Shura begot 10 sons and 5 daughters. The 10 sons of Shura were Vasudeva, Anakadundubi, also called Anakadundubi, and all the other 9 brothers of Vasudeva. And he begot 5 daughters. And one of the famous daughters is Pritha, Kunti Maharani. Then Shukdev Goswami describes the story of the descendants of Vasudeva's sisters. First of all, he describes the story of Queen Kunti. So this Shura, he gave Pritha to his friend Kunti. And Kunti, because he had no issue. So this Kunti, with a choti, he was given this daughter of Shura. So therefore, this girl was called as Kunti Maharani. Once Kunti Maharani, as a small child, she served Durvasa Muni, and Durvasa Muni, he became so very happy by the service of Kunti. He gave her blessings. You can call any devata to beget child. Out of childish curiosity, Kunti, she saw sun god, and she chanted the mantra. To her surprise, sun god appeared. Kunti, she was surprised. And she said, I have just used this power just to test it. I do not want to get impregnated. Please forgive me. You go back. I am just a girl. Please go back. The sun god says, whenever your meeting with demigods should not go fruitless, let me impregnate you. Let me place my seed in your womb, and I will make sure that your virginity remains intact. So therefore, sun god made her pregnant, placed the seed in her womb, and left. Immediately, she did not have to wait. Immediately a child came out of her ears. That's why the child was called as Karna. He was a very, very effulgent personality, just like second sun god. Kunti, fearing the criticism of the people, out with a very heavy heart, unwillingly, she kept the child in a basket covered with a cloth and let it float down in the waters of Ganga. Later, Kunti Devi married the famous and chivalrous king Pandu Maharaj. And then Shukdev Goswami describes the marriage of other sisters of Kunti, Shrutakirti and Shrutashrava and all that. So he says, Shrutakirti married Drishtaketu, Shrutadeva married Vriddha Sharma, a very interesting personality, took birth from Vriddha Sharma, and he was Dantavakra. So Shrutadeva, one of the sisters of Kunti, married Vriddha Sharma, and she begot Dantavakra. Dantavakra is the same Hiranyaksha. And then he describes about another sister, Shrutashrava. Shrutashrava married Damghosha, Chaidya, and begot Shishupal. And then he describes the descendants of the Vasudev's 9 other brothers. After describing this, he describes the descendants of Vasudeva. Vasudeva, he married 9 wives and many others. So his wives, Shukdev Goswami says, were Devaki, Rohini, Pauravi, Madira, Bhadra, Rochana, Ila, Dhritadeva, Shantideva, Upadeva, Srideva, and Devarakshita, and Sahadeva. And he lists down the progeny who were born from these wives. And then he says, Vasudeva married Devaki. From Devaki, he had 8 sons. The 6 sons were killed by Kamsa, and then the seventh personality, Balramji, appeared, who was transferred to Rohini's womb, and then eighth one was Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead. And then he had also one daughter, Subhadra. After describing this, Shukdev Goswami starts the description of the Lord Krishna's wonderful appearance and activities. Yada yada hi dharmasya shayo vriddhischa papmanah tada tu bhagavan isha atmanam srijate harihi. Yada yada hi dharmasya, whenever the principles of religion decline, deteriorate, and the principles of irreligion, they grow, they increase. Tadatu Bhagavan Isha, the supreme personality of Godhead, Hari, appears. And Prabhupada writes, in this age also, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared. Why Krishna appears? Krishna appears to show mercy to living entities. Nahi asya janmano hetu karmano va mahipate atmamayam vineshasya parasya drashturatmanah. Nahi asya janmano hetu. There is no cause for Krishna's appearance. Krishna does not appear to kill the demons. Krishna does not appear for any other purpose. There is only one purpose for the appearance and the activities of Krishna, O Parikshit, Atma Mayam Vineshasya. Out of supreme compassion of the Lord for the living entities. By his personal desire, he appears in this world. So Prabhupada writes, that's the difference between living entities and the Supreme Lord. Supreme Lord appears by his own sweet will. Krishna is not forced by anybody. He is supremely independent personality. Nobody can force the Lord to appear. He descends just to show mercy to the living entities. Nobody can be equal or greater than Krishna because Krishna is asamordhva. Asamordhva means nobody is equal, nobody is greater than Krishna. Therefore, this whole material creation is the mercy of Krishna. Yanmaya cheshtita pumsa sthiti utpatyapyayahi anugrahastan nivritte atmalabhaya cheshyate. Yanmaya cheshtitam pumsaha. The Lord acts through his material energy and he creates, maintains and destroys this entire universe. Why does he do so? Anugraha. All this is performed because of the mercy of the Lord. Lord shows compassion to all the living entities. Entire material creation is made just to show mercy to living entities. What is that mercy? To reclaim the conditioned souls. That was the first one of the 6 questions which was asked by the sages of Naimisharanya. Why does the Lord appear? To reclaim the fallen conditioned souls. That is the only purpose of the Lord to appear. That is the only purpose of the Lord to create this entire material creation. That is the mercy of the Lord. Somebody may say, how can this be mercy? There is so much problem, so many sufferings are there in this world. That is the mercy of the Lord. If everything goes nice, then we will not develop our relationship with Krishna. He acts in such a way so that jivas, we become completely detached from the material creation and be situated in our eternal position of Jivera Swarupa Hoye Krishna Nityadas. Because without intelligence, and Krishna gives the intelligence, Krishna gives the proper mindset by which one can attain him. And that's why jiva, they attain bhakti. That's why the jiva attain jnana. So therefore, Shukdev Goswami says that Krishna appears in the world to relieve the earth of all the burden of demoniac kings. That is the mercy of the Lord. And therefore, after describing this, Shukdev Goswami says that Krishna, his activities are inconceivable. Nobody can understand the activities of Krishna, not even Brahma, not even Shiva, nobody can understand. And then after having described the mercy of Krishna on persons present at this time, Now Shukdev Goswami describes the mercy of Krishna on the future people of Kali Yuga. Kalao janishyamānānām dukkha shoka tamonudam anugrahaya bhaktānām supunyam vyatanottanuh. Kalao janishyamānānām. Krishna is concerned about those who will appear in Kali Yuga. In Kali Yuga, people will be full of dukkha, shok and tama, distress and lamentation which is caused by ignorance. Anugrahaya bhaktanam, to show mercy to living entities, to show mercy to his devotees. Supunyam vyatanottanuhu, he appeared in his own original form and spreads his spotless glories. That is the mercy of Lord. And therefore, the power of Harikatha is Yasmin satkarna piyoshe yasastirtha vare sakrit shrotanjali rupasprishya dhunute karma vasana satkarna piyoshe. Krishna Katha is very, very nectar. Yashastirtha vare sakrit. Hearing them even once is like going to the best of the holy places. Shrotanjali rupasprishya. Make the ears as the cupped hands, and even if somebody drinks a little bit of this nectar, dhunute karma vasana, what will happen? All the sense gratificatory desires, all the lusty desires will be destroyed. Supunyam. Somebody may ask, you have said that Lord is supunya. That means by hearing about the Lord, one goes to Swarga? Said Chakravarti Thakur says, no. Lord is not saying, Shukdev Goswami is not saying that. Ears, one should make the ears like the cupped hand, and in those cupped hands, one should take the nectar of Harikatha, which is nectar for the ears for the devotees. Performing even Achman with this nectar is beneficial. What to speak of drinking it? Even taking one sip is beneficial. What to speak of drinking it many times? It destroys all the impressions of lust. Therefore, it is so very wonderful that Lord has appeared. And then Shukdev Goswami describes the pleasing pastimes of Krishna. He says, Lord is assisted by the descendants of Bhoja, Vrishni, Andhaka, Madhu, Shurasena, Dasharha, Kuru, Srinjaya, Pandu, performed so many pastimes. Snigdha smitekshito darair vakyair vikramalilaya Nilokam ramayamasa murtya sarvangramyaya. Snigdha, with his pleasing smile, smita ikshita, udar, with his affectionate, magnanimous glances, with his pleasing smiles, vakyair, with his pleasing words, with his instructions, vikramalilaya, by his wonderful pastimes, nilokam ramayamasa, Krishna pleased the entire human society, murtya sarvangramyaya. The personality of Lord is all attractive. That is the wonderful form of the Lord. Sarvangaramya. Every part of the Lord is very, very pleasing to see. Yasyananam makara kundala charu karna bhrajat kapola subhagasta vilasa hasam nityotsavam nata tripur drishabhi pibantyo naryo narasya mudita kupita nimescha. What is that beautiful form of Krishna? Yasya ananam. Krishna's beautiful face is decorated with makar kundal, shark-shaped earrings. Charu karna, his ears are already charming. And when the shark-shaped earrings are put, the earrings do not become beautiful. The ears do not become beautiful. Actually, earrings become more beautiful by being put on the ears of Krishna. Padam padam bhushana bhushanangam. Krishna beautifies the ornaments. Bhrajat kapola subhaga savilasa hasam. On his cheeks there are curls of hair, and there is a reflection of the earrings which are falling on the cheeks. He is having a very beautiful smile, playful smile which is attractive to everyone. Nityotsavam nata tripur drishabhi pibantyo. For residents of Vrindavan, it is a eternal festival. For Gopas and the Gopis, all the Brajavasis, it is eternal festival. They are not satisfied, although they are seeing Krishna day in and day out. Still they are not satisfied. Naryo nara shamudita kupita nimesha. And that's why the gopis, they are criticizing Brahma. What type of body you have made? Why you have made these eyelids? We are not able to see Krishna for a moment. It is like yugaitam, it is like ages. That is the attractive feature of Krishna. Krishnanga lavanyapur madhur hoite sumadhur tate mukha sudhakar. मधुर होते सुमधुर तहा होते सुमधुर तारे स्मित ज्योत्सना भर. Kaviraj Goswami describes Krishna's body is a city of beauty. Madhur hoite sumadhur. More beautiful than the body is the lotus face of Krishna. Tate mukha sudhakar. Even in the face of Krishna, Madhur hoite sumadhur taha hoite sumadhur. Even more beautiful than the face of Krishna is the smile of Krishna. Therefore, gopis, they are so very absorbed and attracted seeing the beautiful smile of Krishna. All the Gopa friends, they are ready to do anything for the pleasure of Krishna. That is the wonderful nature of Krishna, the beauty of Krishna. Nobody is satisfied seeing the beauty of Krishna. Although the residents of Dwarka are seeing Krishna every day, they were seeing every day, but still they were not satisfied. Na vitripyanti hidrisha shriyo dhamangam achyutam rajamarge gate krishne dwarkayam kulastriha harmyani aruruhur vipra tadikshana mahotsava. When Krishna is entering Dwarka, it is like a festival for the eyes to see the beauty of Krishna. They were seeing Krishna every day, but still they were not satisfied. So after describing all the wonderful pastime, beauty and activities of Krishna, now, in just 2 verses, Shukdev Goswami summarizes the entire Krishna Leela. Why does he do so? For 2 reasons. To increase the longing of Parikshit Maharaj. It is said that, described by Acharyas, that Shukdev Goswami tested Parikshit Maharaj thrice in Bhagavatam. First, in the 6th canto, we discussed when Parikshit Maharaj asked for the various processes of atonement. First, Shukdev Goswami gave Karma Kand, and then Gyan, and then ultimately he gave Bhakti. Here again, Shukdev Goswami is testing Parikshit Maharaj. Just in 2 verses, Shukdev Goswami completes the entire Krishna Leela. He says, Krishna, the supreme Purushottama, Leela Purushottam Lord, he appeared as the son of Vasudev, left his father's place, went to Vrindavan, performed so many pastimes there, and then there he killed so many demons, he married many wives, he begot hundreds of sons, and then he performed sacrifices to establish his own supreme position. As a householder established, he did so many of the sacrifices. He destroyed the burden of earth by killing so many of the demons, by arranging this Kurukshetra battle, and he destroyed the burden by destroying his own family. After doing all that, he instructed Uddhava in spiritual knowledge and then departed for his abode. In just 2 verses, Shukdev Goswami summarized the entire Krishna Leela. So that is the end of 9th canto. So thank you very much for being with us so long. So we'll not be having classes in this month now because of the book distribution marathon. There are some services which have come up. We'll start again in January. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.